Everyone is familiar with Castella cake, right? Don't you remember it's usually big and thick? It's sold in slices. And for home baking, it's typically made in a large baking pan or a loaf box. This way, it leads to a particular problem that is very common. Because this cake requires water bath baking. Plus, due to the thickness of the cake, it can easily be undercooked. When it comes out of the oven, it can collapse or be unbaked inside. After it exits the oven, the Castella cake will have indentations. Today, we will make smaller Castella cakes. The texture will be the same, but it will be more convenient for baking. Plus, the portion is smaller, so you don't have to worry about not finishing it. I'm making about 10 small ones here. It requires 4 eggs, 56 grams of cake flour, and 8 grams of cornstarch. Heat 50 grams of corn oil. The temperature should be between 60 and 80 degrees. Don't make it too high. If your oil looks like this after pouring, then that's not good. It doesn't mean you can't make a cake, but a temperature that's too high for the oil can cause a problem with the Castella cake, which is sinking. Add a bit of cornstarch. The cake's texture will be smoother. In fact, if you look at many pre-mixed flour recipes, they often include starch as an ingredient. Add 56 grams of milk and 70 grams of egg yolk together. If you add the milk separately here, during the mixing process, it may become dry. The final batter should flow smoothly when dropped. Whip 130 grams of egg whites with 56 grams of granulated sugar. Here, the egg whites. We can beat them until they're slightly soft, but they must be properly whipped. The order of whipping is still to start at high speed, and whip until clear lines appear on the surface of the meringue. Beat on medium speed until the meringue starts to show resistance. Then switch to low speed. Remove the bubbles in the meringue. The final state should have a slight droop at the tip. Take a small portion and mix it with the egg yolk batter. Mix well and then pour everything back into the meringue. There's also the Castella cake. In fact, you can make it without the hot dough method as well. We have tried it. The texture difference is not significant, but adding oil to mix with the flour types. This is very suitable for beginners. This way, no matter how you mix, it's not easy to develop gluten in the flour. Quickly folding from the bottom. This speed needs to be quick. The longer you operate, the faster the deflation of your cake batter will be. This requires more practice. I noticed some classmates can mix it in about 30 strokes or less, and they can mix it all evenly. It's probably because they usually make cakes quite often. This cake, we actually filmed it over several nights, right? Then at least 6 trays were made. This was done for comparison purposes. Everyone knows how to make comparison tutorials. It takes time, effort, and materials. However, we have always persisted in doing this. The goal is also to help everyone avoid mistakes. Friends who find this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Also, consider following. Fill the mold no more than 90% full. Otherwise, it may easily develop a mushroom top after baking. The oven used is the Chandi Cat Xiaoyi Pro. Top heat at 140 degrees Celsius and bottom heat at 150 degrees Celsius. Bake for 65 minutes. This tray of Castella cake uses a black mold. The parchment paper is mismatched and much smaller. When placed inside, it doesn't fit the mold properly, and it uses hot oil above 100 degrees Celsius to scald the batter. After baking, there were indentations on the sides and bottom. The texture of the cake is still very tender. It is also thoroughly baked. The texture melts in your mouth. Here are 2 trays. One tray used a mold that fits with parchment paper. One tray used a slightly smaller mold. The oil temperature did not exceed 80 degrees. After baking, the larger one had some indentations. The smaller mold did not have this issue. This larger mold, I was concerned that the time might be too short. It wasn't fully baked. Then I baked another tray. It had the same indentation issue. The texture was quite good. It also melted in the mouth. However, the indentation issue couldn't be resolved. The smaller mold had no major issues overall. It also did not have indentations. The texture and everything were very good. So, this means that the method of operation and the choice of mold greatly impact the cake. These 2 issues are important when making Castella cake. It's best for everyone to pay attention to these. In the end, I thought about it. I still recorded a segment of the cake after deflating coming out of the oven. Its surface would be a bit rough. This would be termed as non-severe deflation. The texture when eaten is still acceptable. Then I made another tray with the smallest mold. The overall condition of the cake is considered normal. Click on my profile picture. Homepage. There are many practical baking tutorials waiting for you to check in.